like an improvisation. I want it to be like an improvisation that's documented and notated, that is organic. And because of that, it's different. If it comes from itself or grows from the idea, then it's likely to have a different form than if I take it early on and bend it and start pruning it and bending it into what I want it to be. I'm trying to let it be what it wants to be.
Today's guest certainly needs no introduction. He is a mainstay on the jazz circuit, and I'm just so honored to have him on the podcast. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are talking with Drew Gress, who has played with, you name it, Ravi Coltrane, John Hollenbeck. I'm not even going to name them all. Just go to his Wikipedia page and look it up, and soon his new website. I was actually connected with Drew by Richard Ivey, who's a former student of Drew's, and I love connections like that, introductions like that. And what an insightful person Drew is. We talked about so many of my favorite topics. And Drew did this interesting interview that I referenced a few times with Pablo Held. He did that a few months ago. That's linked up to in the show notes. And yeah, I hope you enjoy this. I want to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by the International Online Bass Summit, basssummit.org. That is happening June 24th through 28th. And oh my goodness, what a lineup we've got for that event. And I'd like to talk just a bit here before we get going about one of our sponsors for this event. You've heard of them on the podcast before. That's Kolstein Music, Manny Alvarez and Barry Kolstein, who's now making basses even more than ever. Just such great supporters of the bass community and bass events, and they have been going back decades. I had the opportunity to visit Kolstein on Long Island, the Kolstein shop, and get a tour and see the rosin being made and seeing all the incredible diversity of instruments, and not just basses, but of course basses are what we know them for. Since I visited, and that wasn't that long ago, that was September 2018, they've opened a performing facility on the campus there, and they are changing the way that they're doing that to make that work with the current pandemic situation and going forward. They stay on their toes. They are always adapting and innovating, and I just can't say enough good things about the team at Kolstein. I've been using Kolstein products ever since I started playing bass 30 years ago, and it has been such an honor to get to know these folks and to see everything that Barry, that Manny, that everybody associated with Kolstein has done for the bass community. So Kolstein.com, that's the website. Check out what they're up to. Definitely check out basssummit.org, our summit. Barry is going to be there doing some touring of the shop. Manny's going to be doing some of that, looking at how the rosin's made, talking about the latest instruments. So definitely check that out. Both Kolstein.com and basssummit.org are linked up in the show notes. Okay, let's get into this conversation with Drew Gress.
I play in a trio with Sylvie Courvoisier, who's a great Swiss pianist, and Kenny Wollesen, drummer. And she was curating a festival, and she just offered me one of the sets because we were doing a trio tour after that. So it was kind of built in. She was just being nice to kind of give me the space to do something if I wanted to. And
cool.
Yeah, and so it was a challenge, but especially when you're not playing your own instrument, playing solo is kind of like just take the emperor's clothes off immediately. Totally naked. Man. But but it's cool. It was fun. It was a good experience.
Yeah. Wow.
Enjoyed it.
That's crazy. So I saw. It was maybe this fall. Larry Grenadier came through here and was playing his new solo album basically, and it was kind of interesting because it occurred to me, have you played at SF Jazz here in the city? Okay, I wasn't sure. I figured you'd made it, but so there are two halls. There's the main hall, and then there's this glass enclosed street.
Joe Henderson.
The Joe Henderson, you got it. I know lots of cities do things like that, but what a great idea to be able to see jazz. It's just a really cool way that they did that. And I'm watching Larry play in that space, and it just occurred to me, it was like a Friday night, and it occurred to me like one of the major venues in the city for music, just in general. And I'm watching essentially a solo bass recital. That just was pretty right. Yeah. But he was bringing his own bass. I think he has a removable neck on it, but like even that like is weird. But man, playing a borrowed bass for something like that, it's got to be so challenging.
Yeah. I mean, you get used to it. I did used to travel with my bass all the time, and up until I guess 9/11, and then it became significantly more difficult. So then I went with a Czechie's bass, which I'm not proud of, but it was a good one. And it did sound in the ballpark, it wasn't. And then just when promoters all over the world seemed to know where the good instruments were, and I just decided to try that because the Czechie's also became difficult to bring out. And, I just got used to kind of, it's like blind dates every night. And, if it doesn't go well, it's only one night. And if it does, then it does. And, but I think it's made me a stronger player just to have to deal with that and become kind of less, it's like having a stronger immune system because you're confronting germs all the time. That's kind of like, okay, playing dogs every once in a while. You learn how to get to what you need to get to regardless of the circumstances. So, but also maybe it's all heavy duty rationalization on my part to think that way, but it seems to work psychologically. So.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to look at it. There's this bassist named Artem Cherkov who is in, I think he's in the St. Petersburg Philharmonic or whatever the name of that group is, and he does solo concerts and always borrows a bass. And he might just be saying this, but he says he actually likes the experience of borrowing a bass because in a way, for him at least, it's usually loaned out to him by one of the orchestra players, so he gets to know the players. Right. And he has this whole routine that he goes through to sort of like familiarize himself with the bass, like a bunch of shifting drills. Like, do you have a thing you do, or do you have like a routine to like get to know it?
Yeah, I actually do. It's not much of a routine. I don't always do it, but it depends on how foreign the instrument feels when I first get my hands on it, and sometimes it also depends on the type of music I'm playing. Like, if I'm playing a lot of featured stuff, then I'll be more proactive. But I just created this like a skyscraper, I call it arpeggio thing, where I just keep ascending in either alternating major and minor thirds or minor and major thirds. So you basically are playing like a bitonal or polytonal arpeggio. So an example would be like C, E, G, B, D, F sharp, A. And if I keep going, C sharp, E, G sharp, B, D sharp, F sharp, and just, or the minor equivalent of that. And I'll just kind of transpose that around in some kind of sequence where I have to keep my mind engaged and just, shift up and down and just try with the bow and try and find out where things are as quickly as possible and create some kind of link between the ear and your hands. And yeah, it seems to work pretty well. Wow. So, and it also kind of, I think it's good to practice things that kind of expand your harmonic ear as well, where you're not just doing basic arpeggios, but why not train your ear to hear, polytonally and at the same time, and it also keeps your mind in the game. So yeah, so it's like a two birds with one stone kind of thing.
Well, I've always been curious for people that are doing improvised or more improvised music who borrow basses, because when I go on the road, I always borrow a bass. I just don't want to deal with you. Well, you understand, obviously.
I do it. I love not having the bass with me in the way.
It's the best. It's like being a flute player all of a sudden. It's like it's such an incredible.
You're a normal person. Just travel.
Yeah, so I will just not play things that I wouldn't be able to do on a borrowed bass in terms of repertoire. Like there's some pieces that I definitely am like, all right, this is ready, but not for another bass, because it might be great. But I've always been curious, like, but I'm always doing something, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not improvising, and I've always wondered if that gets in your way if you're trying to like struggle with the instrument, or I mean, probably if the promoters know the good instruments at this point, you're not getting something with strings that are 2 inches off the bass. I mean, maybe you are though. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, sometimes sometimes you're in a beach town in Italy, and that's usually that's the worst case scenario sometimes, because there's just nothing around.
Yeah.
There's no jazz players around that might set it up a certain way or whatever. But you could really, I think your experience has a lot to do with the mindset that you come into it with. And I think I learned pretty early on in that process that it's best to not judge it against what it could be or should be, but just kind of accept it for what it is as part of the improvisational process and say, here is what I've been given to make music with tonight. So let me learn what it's into and what it can do and what it can't do. So, and allow it to inform my choices in a way. And so it keeps it fresh for me, actually, in a really interesting way that I think maybe it wouldn't be if I was playing my instrument every night. I'm actually starting to say I prefer it as a venue to kind of find out more about yourself as a player. Yeah. It's like being a tourist and putting yourself in a brand new place each time. It's like, well, okay, what do I do and who am I and what like that.
Yeah, I always find it kind of interesting. I kind of enjoy exploring other bases myself too, and I think the more older I get and the more I play, the more I sort of appreciate that. I had the most entertaining bass borrowing experience, like your Italian beach town kind of experience. I used to be a high school orchestra director, and I took my orchestra to Cuba a few years ago, and oh my goodness, the basses we got! it was the closest thing to a drug deal I think I could imagine. Like I was told I needed to bring cash to get the basses, so I had like $800 just in 20s or something in my pockets, and there was a van, like just like a kidnapper van, and they're like, come to the van, and I get in the van. I'm just thinking, and it's dusk, it's just like everything. So they pull these basses out. I just can't even describe what I was seeing. I mean, it resembled a bass, but luckily my students were playing them, not me. But I think that was the most bizarre bass borrowing experience I've had.
Strung with barbed wire.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. And yet the music they make is incredible, It's like, in spite of. But yeah, it's funny.
I never had. I just get on the line and start talking with people. That's kind of how this goes. But maybe and you're a known name. It was kind of fun to go back and like I love part of what I love doing a podcast like this is like learning more about people. Like you're a name I've heard and I've listened to over the years, but I like went back and listened to you. Terry Gross had something on you from Fresh Air from like 10 years ago, and go, listen to that chat with Pablo, and but just maybe tell me and folks just how you got into this. And I kind of know guitar to electric bass to double bass, but yeah, just tell me about your background.
You mean just how do I get into music in general?
How did it happen?
Well, I was a nerd kid in school, and of course I had a neighbor that got into playing rock and roll, like playing mountain tunes like Mississippi Queen in the basement. And so, I got an acoustic guitar and kind of joined him with that. But then, it was really the case of just being at a high school that had a really good music department, and they had a really fine stage band. And I just got into, wanting to get more serious about the music from playing the guitar and understanding music theory. And I really wanted to be an arranger, composer kind of person for like big bands and like, so I was kind of coming at it from a big band nerd angle, sort of, I would say, like Stan Kenton's music, or, I didn't even really know the hippest big bands per se. I was just, had a narrow worldview, and also was into cartoon music. So,
oh, really?
Anyway. And so I went to college for that at Towson University to study arranging with Hank Levy, actually, who's one of the first guys to get into odd time signatures, although there really wasn't an interest. But if you're a composer, arranger, or want to be, you need to have access to a large ensemble to play it. So that was a way to also get access to a big band. And then gradually living in Baltimore and Washington area, it's kind of an ideal scene for young players, I think, because it's big enough to be a real city scenario. So there are clubs and advanced players, but it's small enough that you can infiltrate and start taking part in the scene. And I just came under the wing of some mentor players, like Richard Roeder's a guitarist and fine guitarist and composer in Baltimore, and he basically continued my musical education outside of college with just developing my sense of taste and exposing me to a lot of things I didn't know about. And I hung out there for a few years after I graduated from college, and then wanted to get to New York just to see what it was like and if I could hang and just become better. And it seemed like if I really wanted to go for it, that's what I had to do. And went to Manhattan School of Music. I was offered a scholarship there and a chance to get done with a master's in 1 year, so I did that and got out, and then got into the scene. And and then just the younger players I was playing with and of my peers, there are certain doors that are closed and other ones that are possibilities, so you kind of go through the door that's possible. So that was more downtown quote unquote music, or more an outer version of what the mainstream was. And so we just started going that way. So it was almost like a utilitarian choice taste wise, because I would have been content playing mainstream things as well, but it was almost like an either or scenario down in those days. And then it was just word of mouth and following my nose, and it just, that's what I love about the musical community is it's just kind of naturally filtering situation where you wind up playing with the people that you should be playing with, I think, because you say yes, you say no, hopefully from your gut. At least I always did. And you find the people you're meant to be making music with, and if it works, you stay there. If it doesn't, you move on. And it's a fluid situation, but I think it's been cool. I think it's like a highly functioning machine, the whole scene, I think. And and also interesting to kind of take your hands off the wheel and see where it goes, because I really wasn't really particularly controlling with the choices, just went with the gut day to day.
That's an interesting concept. I've never really actually thought about that. Like you kind of find the players you're meant to play with. There's the old, I don't remember who the quote's attributed to, but you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think that's, think about the different playing I've done over the years. I think that's true. And as you change, that can change too, for sure.
Yeah. And or as the public perception of you changes, also it can change. Like I started out with certain people, and then there was a time about 10 or 15 years ago where I was becoming a little bit better known, and so other people were interested in playing. But as time continued, I kind of returned to the people you originally played with, because those are really the people that wanted to play with you, not the little name you or something.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's interesting to watch life. It's kind of is coming like a circle, and also I don't know, I see as I'm getting older now, when you're younger, your purview keeps expanding and expanding, but now I'm realizing I just can't keep expanding because there's no room left to store so I'm kind of narrowing a little bit and trying to go into fewer things. And so the whole orientation is changing. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. What do you find yourself going deeper into specifically, like stylistically or types of composition or play, or what?
I'm just becoming more aware of what matters to me. Like, I haven't done my own thing for a few years now because of my wife got ill and all that, and I just didn't have the energy for it. But as I'm starting to come back to it, just trying to coming to a greater understanding of what certain music that I really love, why I love it, and also how the bird thing influences the way I hear polyphony or harmony or just pacing of like organic rhythm and things like that. And for instance, I just became aware of this series called Keeping Score that's online on YouTube, I think. And Michael Tilson Thomas does. And I don't know if he's well regarded in the classic world.
For sure. Yeah, no, I was watching that right when I was getting ready to move to San Francisco. And it's great to see. I sub in the symphony, not right now because there's a symphony, but so it was really interesting to get to know those players and see them. But it's such a lovely series.
Yeah, and the Shostakovich Five, there's a third movement there that I just played it beautifully, and it was just it just went right in to the heart chakra, and so I just transcribed it, and I've been checking it out, just and it's really just about the bass movement has a lot to do with that. Now the bass is what resolves the tensions, and so that's having an influence on my writing that way. And just kind of, I think you can stand a little farther removed from yourself and just kind of observe how your thought process work and it helps you. I think it speeds up the process of getting to what you're looking for sometimes when you're writing. So it's kind of hard to articulate it because I didn't really put words to it or had tried to, but just kind of being more at peace with who you are currently. Also just saying, well, this is all right. These are my tools. Let's do something now, rather than trying to acquire more and more tools. And someday I'll get to actually use them. And so I'm just trying to actually use them and stop with the grass is always greener and looking, oh, that's cool over there.
Let
me hunt for that.
Yeah, I certainly know that feeling. Like I'm always like even like with I dabble in electronic music, and it's always like, oh, let's find some more plugins. And it's like, no, Jason, let's take. Oh, there we go.
There's the Euro rack right there. It's. Okay. So I'm still doing it. It's guilty.
Oh wow. Okay, so we get some serious rat holes we can go down here. But like, it's funny because I find myself like so it's like I pick up. I just keep, before I know it, I've bought $1,000 worth of plugins, and I'm like, okay, and I can't use one of them. So like, all right, a while back I was like, okay, you can't buy, you have to only use this one, and like really try to understand. And I find that same thing with like, I've got all these cameras around me and everything too. And it's like, I'm trying, failing, but hopefully succeeding more often than I'm failing to like go deep on a couple tools.
It's so true, man. I think it's like your intelligence is rampantly like pillaging the landscape, looking for something that you can grab onto, and but you never really stop anywhere for long enough to really dig deep. So I'm as guilty of that as anyone, I think, and still, but I thought this could have an influence on timbral imagination too. Like I got that really just for pure sound, and it is intriguing, and maybe it's a desperate way to try and prove to myself that an old dog can still learn some tricks too, I guess.
Well, I think it's so interesting to get into that because it totally made me rethink about the way I thought about tone in general when I started going deep. I ended up, back when I was teaching high school, I got the offer to teach this electronic music class, which I turned into, it ended up being like a sound design class. And this is maybe 10 years ago at this point. And I just went deep. I spent like 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Like I bought way too much gear, which is now in my wife is annoyed at all this electronic gear we keep carrying around. But it made me really, I think spending so much time on an acoustic instrument where you have timbral choices, but then you're going into the electronic world where you can literally do anything and create anything, and create instruments that don't really exist, but that it's just such an endlessly fast. It really made me think differently about tone on my own instrument and about tone within. This is when I was conducting a lot. It made me think a lot differently about the orchestra too, and the timbral, so I just think it's endlessly fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, you can make sounds that have never been heard before, I think, potentially, and can you imagine, I don't know, like somebody like Stravinsky with a timbral ear like that, just, getting his hands on that for a year or so and just see what, it would just be fascinating to see, to me, what that would be.
Well, I remember I've been a Frank Zappa fan for a big chunk of my life, and I remember how into, I think it was the Synclavier or something. He in the 80s, he was like pretty early into that and creating these albums. There's this hilarious clip floating around on YouTube of Frank talking to some LA daytime reporter, and he's like shirtless playing his Synclavier in his, it's like 1985 or something. But it's so interesting. As any kind of musician, but certainly as someone who composes or creates, it's just an unbelievable universe you're opening up.
Was the Yellow Shark, was that a lot of synclavier on that?
Oh, so there was this great album. Okay, so yeah, another. So there was an album he put out right around. I think it was an album that he was working on, and then it was released posthumously. Cause I think, but like right after Cold,
Right.
I think Civilization Phase 3. That it was all with the synclavier. Then the Yellow Shark is amazing because that was there was a lot of orchestral. I don't remember if it was mostly orchestral, but a lot of it. But that was also. I don't remember exactly how. I think a lot of that was with live musicians. And I remember back in college, like in the early 90s or mid 90s or something, that had come out. And we actually, in our contemporary music ensemble, we had a Yellow Shark concert where we recreated as best we could. Some of that stuff is insane.
Right.
What a lot of that. So,
Yeah, that's some wild stuff. I remember being pretty turned on by his thing, you know.
Well, I'd love to know how do electronic or experimenting, how does that work for you? Cause like for me, I get up and I just start exploring. I start, I boot up my iPad or I boot up my laptop and boot up Ableton Live and either pull out a couple of synths or if I'm on the iPad, I'm just doing things, just all on the iPad, but I just like see what happens, and sometimes I record it, sometimes I don't. Like, what do you do with that?
Well, it depends, like right now I'm at the point where I'll plug it in and put the monitor speakers on, just mess around, but I'll find some kind of a bridge abutment or corner I've kind of gotten myself into, and really I'll just ask myself, what do I feel like what are my knowledge limitations? Like, how can I find a workaround if I want to do this? Because, and so, I'm just trying to problem solve for a while on the thing. And then I might just say, well, I'll open Logic. I usually work in Logic. So I just open that up and just record what happens and then see if I can, build on top of that or just act. And also treating it like an improvisational instrument, like try and be compositional with what happens in real time. But that's way down the road for me, like as far as having control of it. Because, I didn't assemble it module by module. I just got one of the make noise shared systems because I know myself it would never get off the ground if it wasn't playable out of the box, for me. So I just said, look, this is lesson 1 in not accumulating and never getting to it. Just get the whole thing and dive in. There's no excuse then. And but I still need to spend much more time on it. I'd love to spend hours a day on it. I just haven't. I don't know. The COVID thing, I mean, I feel like I have life force and I can do things, but not the duration of time that I've been able to. I don't know. It's like on a subliminal level, it's kind of depressing, I think.
Yeah, I've been much more frustrated with myself than I was expecting. Because I thought like I could actually, for me, I was on the road for about 3 months, like pretty much more often than not. And this was the time we just moved, and these couple months I was going to be home anyway, doing home projects. So if I don't turn on the news or look at all the people with face masks outside, my life isn't actually that different than what I was expecting to do. But I've been struggling with creative. I mean, I still get things done every day, but it's not like I've had it's put a damper on my creativity, I think, in a real way. And I mean, try not to be too hard on myself, but I feel that.
It's like trying to photosynthesize on a cloudy day or something like that, a rainy day. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it, but it's a lot more work than it normally is or should be, and then hence I think if it's creative work, then it suffers when it's like you're flogging yourself to do it. It's not coming from a place that translates well,
Well, for me, and I like spending time at home and getting work done at home, but I also I feel like I get fuel from being in other cities, countries, and that sort of fuels my creativity. That then when I am home, a lot of the time I'm writing or doing various things. But it's and I'm sure musicians everywhere are feeling this, but it's a little weird to have this Groundhog Day feeling of
especially when you have to dealing with groundhogs in your yard that are just violating all precepts of good behavior. And, I've named one of them Satan here in my yard is, So it's an actual Groundhog Day. I'm living here. And
That's
I
hilarious.
feel like Bill Murray in Caddyshack, actually. I'm ready to get the dynamite.
We've been, my wife and I've been noticing songbirds walking around the neighborhood, thinking about birds, and it's just we're walking up these steps in our neighborhood, and there are always songbirds in this tree there, and just like listening to that, like what a fascinating evolution. And I it's so cool that I've never really thought about that in relation to my own music making or anything, but it sounds like you have.
Well, I mean, it's just, I think if you spend enough time doing anything, these are the two things I spend most of my time doing. I mean, it's playing music and I mean, I'm a firm believer that the human impetus to make music came from natural sources originally, like hearing birds and hearing frogs, and, the link between frogs and rhythm in Africa and tropical places is pretty well documented and seems to make perfect sense. Or when the cicadas are going out here in the trees, in the end of summer. And so you just start to see links, or you say, well, that could be cool. I mean, my hedge out here in migration, there's all different species and there's many individuals in the hedge, and they're just all doing their thing, not really, I think, adjusting for the environment. And I think it creates an interesting spacing, that's less organized than a musician would naturally create polyphony. So, it opens a question mark. Well, what if I tried that musically, and so I guess you're looking for anything that doesn't, like you said, looking for something else to your camera. It's like, oh, maybe I could do that. That's, and it just seems like, untrodden territory on a certain level. So I guess it's attractive from that standpoint,
Well, I've never tried this with birdsong, but I do remember as I was starting to get into electronic music, like just realizing the liberation of like actually recording something and putting it into for me Ableton Live, and like realizing, wow, I can take this sound and I can turn it into anything, and this polyphonic instrument, or I can take this, this like knock and so that sort of like limitless sound painting you can do in those environments. I just that's something that really was like a revelation to me when I realized,
Yeah. I mean, timbre is, in a way, that's like the color, they say it's color, but I'm sure you're this way too. With color, I have really specific tastes. Like I like that shade better than this one. And ooh, that makes me feel this way. And, why not with timbre as well? That's where the emotion is in the sound, I think, a lot of times. Just the fabric of the sound,
How do you for me, even whether I'm on the road, it's less than when I'm on the road, but certainly when I'm at home, I kind of keep quote unquote office hours for creativity, which seems insane in a way, but I just sort of like park my butt in the chair and make things happen. Do you do that? Have you done that? Like do you have like and I know it's so tough in normal times, especially when you're touring a lot, because playing late night shows and travel and all that. But I know people find different ways to manage that, and some people have real disciplined, things that. How is like your creative process? How does that work for you? Maybe like right now when we're all sitting at home, or in when you're on the road, probably in more regular times.
Yeah, well, there was a time in my life where I was very regimented, like after college, where I had like, of course there was lots to still be learned on the bass. So I had a whole notebook of, things I needed to get to, including improvisation. And I guess composing was included in that too. But for myself, I feel like if I write on too much of a schedule, what I write seems to have a certain sameness to it, or, I think if I currently had my own band and my career depended on me producing new material, I would be more methodical about it and more disciplined. But I do have things that are in various stages of completion. So for me, it's more like tending gardens. Like I plant the things and then I write them down, hopefully, or record them so that I can remember the context of the material, and then check back on it. A lot of it's just going by the gut. Like I have a folder filled with pieces like this solo project I'm trying to finally complete, which, people that know me will be rolling their eyes at this point. I've been hearing about it so long. There's like about 35 pieces, and they're gradually becoming closer and closer to completion. But I'll with those sonic things, I'll just put them up and then just listen and see if anything rubs me the wrong way. And if I have no complaints after several times, then I guess they're done for now. And but not so much on a schedule, and not so disciplined, I'm afraid. But that's just me. I think other people I know do fantastic creative work when they're disciplined and do it on a schedule. But I think that might be different if I had to do it in a way.
Yeah.
So no real great revelations there from me.
So you work in I'm always interested in idea capturing, or however you want to put it too. So at least some of what you do, or if it's electronic, you do in Logic. Do you use Logic for other types of writing too, or are you notating things?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have, I'm writing things down. Yeah. Especially if it's, it depends on where I am too. Like a lot of times I'm at NYU, I teach as an adjunct at NYU with grad students, and sometimes they can't make it or whatever, and I suddenly have some time. That's often where I'll start notating things, because I have a beautiful Steinway baby grand there, and I don't know, you tend to hear different things when you have a really nice piano than when you don't. And so I'll write those things down. But I have a keyboard here, and I do write things in a traditional way as well. And then I might get it into Sibelius or not, or which I'm bummed out with them right now, but for another reason. But I have a Mac with a T2 chip, and it will not pipe the sound through the headphone jack. So that means I can't write in a public place. And it's like, and they're not fixing it. So boo on Avid. I'm going to shame them into dealing with
that's okay. Shame away. That stinks. Oh.
Yeah. So whatever. But also I have no compunction in Sibelius just pasting things on top of each other to see what that creates, and then try and shoehorn it into something that sounds good to my mind. But but that's part of trying to keep the process different too, so that I can create different work. I mean, I don't want to always write at the piano, because I know that I'm going to start writing the same things, or you get attracted to certain sounds and your hands just magically go there every time. It's like, I want it, like an improvisation. I want it to be like an improvisation that's documented and notated, that is organic, and because of that, it's different. If it comes from itself or grows from the idea, then it's likely to have a different form than if I take it early on and bend it and start pruning it and bending it into what I want it to be. I'm trying to let it be what it wants to be, with as little, even though I'm the one writing it down, I guess it was my idea, but I'm also trying to just get out of the picture and let it be what it wants to be in my estimation. So it's weird. It's like a conflicted approach. So it makes conflicted sounding music probably. But I like kind of stepping back and seeing what it like. Here, I'll just start it, and then you become what you want to become. I don't know. That's interesting. It's like being what I imagine being a parent is like, but with none of the pressure. If it all goes wrong, then just throw it in the trash can. You can't throw your child in the trash cans.
I love thinking of that. I mean, I feel like that way for creative processes. For me, it's more like writing or doing some other project like that. But it's something that I guess it comes from me, but it has a life of its own. And I just want to try to set up the systems so that it'll happen, or give it the time it takes. How about when you're on the road? Do you have any sort of process for capturing ideas when you're on the road? Like for me, I got my iPad with me, and I will do different. I'll get things down in a different way there than when I'm at home. Not necessarily better or worse. It's just different. But like, what about when you're on tour? Do you, or maybe you're not doing that kind of work on tour? How does that work?
Well, it depends. It depends. I have done a lot of writing on the road when I had like an upcoming recording date, and you just have a deadline, and your life at home is crazy too, and you just don't or you're just having a wealth of ideas for some reason, and you just need to get them down. But yeah, there is a lot of downtime traveling on the road, where you have this yawning, wow, I'd love to take advantage of this, because you're on the train for 5 hours, and it's like, oh yeah, and it's nice, and you relax, and you can focus, and yeah. But I might just record a snippet of an idea and notes or some kind, where you just like a little voice memo and sing something so it gets context. Or if you hear the harmony, I have like a little moleskin notebook, where you sketch things down, and also bring some sheet music paper, to manuscript paper, and nothing extraordinary, but just that sort of thing. Or if I'm in my room and I could even record into Logic through the computer speakers, but it's really just trying to get the context of the idea. I can't tell you how many, notated ideas I've put to paper, and I cannot recall the context of how I was doing. It's like, this is not, I thought it was cool at the time, but whatever made it cool is not here on the paper. So it's no longer cool. And so it's another one, but in a way it's freeing to just put an X through it and move on, to something else. Because there's so many snippets that have gone undeveloped here too. It's don't want to look down there. That's just too much ego. I mean, I'm trying to almost kill my ego, but not totally destroy it. So it's like, that's really what. Just ego death there.
Do you ever just go through all those old snippets and see what's there? Because I have systems like that for writing or for other and I have a whole lot of bad ideas. I use this program Evernote, and I've got like my bad idea folder, and every once in a while I will go in there and there's something that I should have dug out, but it's a little scary sometimes to go in.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have a premonition, like I think, or you've just got time to, you're just getting the shit clean out the shelves, and you just, I'll check it out and see, and but it's really depressing when you come across some older pieces. That was a really cool idea. Why don't I have cool ideas like that anymore? So, but it's like you've already been there and done that, so it's like you feel like you have to move on, even though it's in retrospect, it was nice. Shouldn't have never moved from that place, Yeah.
So you do some adjunct teaching at NYU, and then you're also at Towson, right? Or have been?
Well, no, I
at
do.
Some point? Yeah.
Well, because I'm an alumni, I guess they do an artist in residency thing on a 2-year rotating thing. So I'm there every 2 years to do a week, and in one of the semesters, and so that's nice to come back and work with young people and do some creative things you may not have a chance to do outside of that scenario,
Well, here's a question for you. This is less relevant now because I don't actually do this work anymore, but I used to teach at DePaul University in Chicago, and I was I had a couple different roles, but one was I was like the quote unquote classical guy for the jazz players, which is not every school has that setup. It's kind of like an older setup, but they would study with whoever was there at the time for the jazz lessons. Then I'd have these 2 years of classical lessons with them. And I did that for maybe 9 years. And I never felt like I had any idea what to, I was always trying to figure out the best way to like serve these students.
Yeah.
And I would think, should I teach them like bass sonatas? I don't know. Maybe should we explore jazz, but maybe like talk about technical things, and maybe I'm gonna see. And so I just always struggled with like how to should I teach them how to? I just always struggled with that role. Any advice maybe for Jason from 7 years ago, or anybody who's like in that kind of position?
Well, I mean, I don't really know how the students are going to feel about any of this, but I mean, I did work quite a bit as a total dilettante. I realized that in order for me to play jazz on the level that I wanted to, I had to spend some time with the bow as well and really get my intonation and sense of pitch and shape and tone shaping together. So I did do some of that work, but I think for jazz players, it's primarily just good tone production and intonation. And if you can, with my students, I try to find really good pieces of music that they're not going to tire of, that they might be motivated to stay with, regardless of the sound they're producing with the bow or whatever, And so I mean, the Bach things is still a big thing. It's really good music, and you can play it many different ways, and it can with different personality approach to the pieces, and it's still great music that sounds good by itself, I think, as well. And I don't know, but I think it's more just about sound production for like as far as what jazz players could really benefit from focusing on. I think, just sound production and with the left hand, I think, in a way, like, because that has a big role in sound production as well. I think jazz players sometimes don't really realize what a role that plays, and, it's not just how you pluck the string in the pizzicato sense. I mean,
You were talking with Pablo in that interview about sound production and like your early tone on the bass and like maybe like how tone evolved for you. Like how did that all work once you got to the upright bass? Like.
Well, Well, I mean, I'm 60 now, so this is like late 70s is when I was kind of forming.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, Eddie Guns was everywhere then. And so he was, of course, I was all over that and what he was doing. So my sound was informed by that. And I wanted to play in the thumb position a lot with, some expressiveness and, some dexterity and whatever. So I focused on that to the neglect of the lower end of the instrument, which is, of course, as I became got an opportunity to play with better and better players, they were all about like, would you stop doing that? And give me some of that other thing that you're not doing, please. So it dawned on me that I needed to like address all of that. And so I just really dove into, time playing and getting a bigger, darker sound, although I still play tomastic. So I guess my sound didn't get that dark. But that's just because I'm addicted to the growl that it gives me. So I still haven't gotten over that or evolved past that yet. Yeah. But and so just trying to make that more of at least the time more of a priority. And then I don't know if my sound got much darker, but I did try to make it fuller by kind of being willing to work for tone, I guess. And and it just evolved that way until I don't know, just eventually you just sound like you sound. And I don't know if it's evolving anymore, but it's just hopefully the pilot is evolving and the craft is not falling apart yet, but although it is, but so I guess the concept just evolved, but it's at some point, I think it just becomes like an unconscious thing too. It's just, you keep playing what you're hearing. Yeah. And where it ends up, it's not so directed. It's just, I want to hear it this way. You do that. So it's we're quite a bit subconscious for me also, I guess.
Well, there's nothing like that visceral quality of the tomastics, the spirochord, like that. I don't play much on them these days, but when I do, it's incredible. And when you're on the road, you're playing what you get right on these different dates. But like in terms of gear, like your own bass or what you use, I never ask. People always say like, Jason, ask more gear questions. I always want to just talk about life, like universal life things. And then they say, like, why did you talk about bass? So maybe in the interest of the people that are going to email me and ask for that, like what do you play on to get that sound that you like these days in terms of strings, the bass you play, like amplification, what you might do? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the bass I play it's a Rivière Hawks, so it's basically like a French, like Miracourt type bass, but with an English neck on it, which is weird. But I do like the sound, and it's a round back, like 7/8 size instrument from like 1887, I think. And I have tomastics. I've had tomastics my whole life. I mean, I dabbled with other ones, but I just come back to them, I guess, because they stay true for so long, and I play with a fairly high action, so I hit the strings pretty hard. And I think gut strings, I feel like I'd be retuning them at every opportunity. And so it's almost like, what, that battle is over. I'm just gonna sign off, and I'm going to use these and see what I can do with that. So I don't put a lot of energy into searching. Although I have played other basses on the road, there's a string I really like on an instrument, and I've photographed the strings, but no one's been able to tell me what they are. Like, they might be Genslers.
Those are crazy strings. Those are good strings.
Nobody's conclusively told me that's what they are, but I'd like to get a set of them and just see, because I like to hear my bass on them, but with those on them. Yeah. And amplification wise, as a pickup, I mean, I try not to use much pickup, but it's necessary if you're playing with some drummers that are clobbering, which is fun too. So you want to be able to get in. And I just have like an old realist, like prototype that is falling apart. And it has a wood chip in it or something, where it sounds a little darker than most of those do. And but usually I try to when I'm recording, I always use, I never use a pickup in a recording, just Sheps and Neumann mostly, and I don't really, and I just for a microphone live, I just have like an Audio-Technica dynamic mic that I thread through the A and D string on a chopped off microphone gooseneck taped to my tailpiece, and I put that through a Walter Woods. I still have a Walter Woods head that I use with a small Eden cabinet if I play live, but almost never, unless I'm playing the Vanguard or Birdland, I normally don't bring my own gear on the road. I just whatever. Yeah. In town. So that's the extent of my gear. And I have a Rodney Moore bow, I think, that I like, that I play with.
Nice.
I don't know if he's well regarded or not, but
like the bow. Yeah. No, that's all good. That's all good stuff. That's good bass and bow. That's great.
Yeah. And
well, nobody's on the road at all right now. I mean, but I can't wait. I will keep an eye out when we all get on the road again, whenever that may be. And the next time you're here in San Francisco playing SF Jazz or something, I will definitely look you up. I'd love to buy you a drink and hang out in person. It's fun to do this, more fun in person and get see a play. So I appreciate Richard connecting us, and
likewise.
Thanks.
Pleasure, man.
Thanks for spending some time.
You,
yeah, absolutely.
My pleasure, man.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too, man.
Drew, thank you so much for chatting. Richard, thank you for the introduction. DrewGress.com is the website, though I think that's being worked on right now. So we've got a link to his Wikipedia page in the show notes. And of course, just look him up on any platform. You're going to find recordings galore. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I am so happy to be doing this, even though we're going through all this craziness right now, economically, health-wise, and all of that you don't need me to tell you about. This is a nice point of stability for me in my life. I hope that it is for you. I would love to see you continue the conversation, as I like to say, at the Bass Summit, basssummit.org. Check it out. Join Gary Carr, John Clayton, Rufus Reed, Kristen Korb, who else? Danny Zeman, John Goldsby. I'm thinking of some other Discover Double Bass tutors that are going to be there. It's quite a lineup. So hope to see you there. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you want to reach out to me, feedback@contrabassconversations.com is my email. I may be slow at getting back to you with all the admin behind this Bass Summit. I am organizing this along with Barry Green, and we brought the wonderful Elisa Jansen-Jones, who I've had on the podcast before. Somehow she agreed to organize this festival for us. I'm sure that she is wondering why she did that with all the behind the scenes moving parts that something like this entails. But I'm so thrilled to be a part of this. I would love to have you be there too. Thank you to the team that puts these together. Krista Kopper, Mitch Moehring, Trevor Jones, Steve Hinchey, Michael Cooper. I did that backwards. I don't know why. Mitch Moehring is not only making beautiful basses outside of Dallas-Fort Worth, but he's organizing the luthier track for the Bass Summit. Am I talking about the Bass Summit enough? Don't worry. Only a few more weeks. I'll be doing that. But join Mitch and me and so many other people there, and check out mitchmoehring.com, his website, for more on what he's up to. I am your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.